Let's cross over now to Parliament, where Mama V Owusu-Abuaje is standing by as she takes it over from here.
But we'll talk about some of the significant events that happened throughout his delivery of the State of the Nations. I guess we're going to zero in on particularly what happened in February 2020. There will also be the dissolution of Parliament, the inauguration of the Speaker, the swearing in of the 8th Parliament. So lots of activities, which requires a lot of security. So tight security at the premises of Parliament today. Like I said, if you really have no business, don't even think about coming around. Just stay with us because we will not let you miss anything that will happen in Parliament. My name is Mama V Owusu-Abuaje. This is the AM show. It's our special conversation coming to you live from Parliament. Let me introduce to you my guests who are seated. Member of Parliament for 2nd D, Andrew Egyapa Mercer. Happy New Year. This is our first meeting.
This is our first meeting.
Yes.
Of course, we didn't meet, I believe, in like a month before the elections.
Yes.
Yeah.
We spoke on Zoom.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Rashid Rahman, we spoke yesterday. We've been having a lot of interactions via Zoom. It's good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. And of course, he's the executive director of Egyapa. So I want us to begin this conversation. A lot has happened, particularly yesterday. So we spent time and talk about the development with regards to the leadership of parliaments on the side of the NPP. But just briefly, we can talk about the state of the nation. So maybe Dr. Rashid Rahman, let me start with you. What do you remember most about the President's State of the Nation address? Well, addresses, if you like.
I am not too sure that I can specifically mention, specific issues that I have tracked because we haven't done any work tracking to see whether some of the promises that have been made or pronouncements that have been made have been fulfilled. But I think that as a country, over the years, one of the things that I would have loved to see is maybe some outfit tracking whatever our presidents come to say before Parliament, and then when they come for the next State of the Nation, we see whether the promises that were made, whether the pronouncements that were made have really been fulfilled.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to make any pronouncements that are based on guesswork.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think for me, this is what I would have loved to see. That when we are having a conversation like this, or when the State of the Nation address is going to take place, we look at the previous one and see which promises have been fulfilled or not.
From an objective point of view.
Exactly.
From an independence,
yes,
maybe, let me put it that way.
Exactly. Because I am sure if it is, if we were in a parliamentary system where the head of government, the prime minister, is also a member of parliament, the members of parliament get to question him on a regular basis on the kind of promises that, he or she has made before the House. But we practice a system that is not as such. And the president only shows up in Parliament perhaps once a year. And during that time, the communication is one way because the president only gets to speak to the nation through our representatives. And, our representatives don't even get to ask him any questions. Whatever he says becomes a matter of debate subsequently before
after he's left,
after he's gone. So I think this is where we find ourselves.
Okay. All right. Egyapa Mercer, is there anything you want to specifically talk about?
I don't think that the State of the Nation address that His Excellency the President has delivered essentially contains promises. Because if you look in Article 67, which mandates His Excellency the President to provide a message on the state of the nation, during every session of Parliament and also before the dissolution of Parliament. Clearly doesn't provide any content. But you can find what it is that is expected of him to say in Article 34, which spells out what the directive principles of state policy is and what it is that our aspirations as a people are, as contained in our Constitution, and which enjoins the President to provide an update on what it is that he has done to achieve those objectives as contained in chapter 6 of the Constitution. Promises essentially would be contained in our annual budget statements that we provide.
Oh, but he does make promises when he delivers the State of the Nation address.
Well, you may indicate some policy direction and some commitments at achieving the objectives that are contained in the directive principles of state policy. Of course, I mean, without necessarily going into the content, if I recall quite clearly, in 2017, during his first State of the Nation address, he clearly had to provide an account of what it is that he had met the state of our nation, Ghana, particularly.
Isn't
with
that
respect
always
to
bleak? It really doesn't matter once it's a change.
Facts are facts.
Once it's a change, he'd come and tell you what he met.
If it was concocted, then you would suggest that maybe he was selective in what it is that he put out. But these are matters of fact. Indeed, the former president, Mr. Mahama himself, when he was exiting, made clear admissions of where it is that the economy of Ghana had been, if you like, where we had found ourselves in terms of the IMF program and all the things that declining growth, economic challenges that we're facing. So when His Excellency the President came, he needed to put what the state of the nation was at the time. Subsequently, progress has been made. And so at every point that he comes, he needs to put the issues in proper context and to apprise the good people of this country where it is that he's been able to advance our course in terms of the attainment of directive principles of state policy. So I think that, and if you look quite closely, you'll see that it is mainly the budget statement and economic policy that you find what it is that the government has programmed. Yes, I agree, some commitments are made by His Excellency the President in the State of the Nation address. But by and large, it's the budget that drives what the government agenda is. And the State of the Nation then provides us some content to compare where we were before and where we've gotten to as a nation.
I want us to talk about a significant event that happened in the last State of the Nation address, because we saw the minority walkout, and they walk out in grand style, because this was after the president had essentially settled in the chamber, and then they staged the walkout.
I like the description, grand style. But how else? I don't think it was grand style. How else would they have gotten?
Well, I guess for those of us who were watching, it wasn't something that we were expecting. We saw the placards.
I don't recall what transpired in 2013 when the MPP also, then in the minority, staged a walkout on account of the legitimacy of the then president-elect, because you recall that the MPP had gone to court post the 2012 general elections to seek to overturn the outcome of the result. Of course, our friends have sought to, in their words, erase all doubt in the petition of 2020. What it means, I don't know.
You are the lawyer here.
Oh, so
you should be educating us.
That, in 2012,
it's to set the record straight.
What record?
They want the figures reconciled, I guess. But let's not even get into the petition of the NDC.
I was going to relate whether that then amounts to they are questioning the legitimacy of His Excellency. But I guess so, because they are asking for a rerun. But we'll see how they react. I wouldn't be surprised if they do not turn up, or that
for the address.
Yes, today, or that if they do, that they will do something that would capture the headlines.
What are you expecting?
I wouldn't be surprised if they walk out today as well.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, these are the NDC. Or they could do something dramatic that will capture the headlines and take the attention of what it is that the content of His Excellency the President's message would be.
The MPP has also worked out before, so this is not just the NDC.
I mean, that's
they
why
decide to do this.
No, but of course, I'm not questioning their right to do so. I'm just saying that if they do any such thing, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
But of course, we'll have a one-sided haul if they do. To pay attention to the message that His Excellency the President would deliver. And I guess that majority of Ghanaians will be glued to their TV sets, radio sets, listening, would be interested in what it is that the President say. Of course, post the address, the discussion will commence. And if it is the case that they do walk out or do something dramatic, it will take the space temporarily.
Okay.
But then after we'll get back to the focus.
Before I go to Dr.
Dramana, several other activities that are coming up during the course of the week. And so I don't see...
Okay. You've been here for a while now this morning. Have you spotted any of your minority friends?
No. I came in really early, went to the new facility. It's looking pretty good. I guess it will serve the purpose well. Enough space to maintain the protocols.
Okay,
because
sure.
that's the rationale for not holding it in the chamber. I don't know if you're aware that some seats have been taken out. So
the chamber?
Absolutely.
Oh,
so that
okay.
at any one point, you cannot have all 275 members of parliament sitting. But of course, on an occasion such as this, obviously, every member of parliament would wish, except those who may choose to walk out.
Yeah.
Would wish to be present to represent their people. And so, to that extent, I think it's a good facility that has been put out there.
Okay,
and,
well, thank you for briefing us on that. Even though I asked if you had met some of your minority friends.
So I was indicating that I'd been there and then come into the main block.
Okay.
Because I haven't been to the offices, but the car park was not too full as well when I came in. So I guess that many of them are not here, but I'm sure they'll come.
I have an assignment though, so right after this conversation, I'm going to check it out myself and find out if the minority members are in the house. We should have had one join us for this conversation. He hasn't shown up yet. But Dr. Draman, this all started because I brought in the walkouts from the last State of the Nation address.
Yes.
What are you expecting really?
Well, honestly, I think now that this matter is in court, now that the NDC has decided to go to court, I think they should participate in all the processes from now till inauguration. Otherwise, they'll be sending very wrong signals. On the one hand, you want to challenge the process in the law courts and make the court the final kind of body that would make a pronouncement. And as we have seen before, we've been here before, that in 2012, when our current president lost and went to court and the court made a pronouncement, he said, I disagree with the pronouncement, but I accept it. And that's what I'm expecting of our honorable members from the NDC side. Because during that time, I think the MPP took part in all the processes.
They did not quite. Mr. Egyapa Mercer, you didn't take part in all the state activities when you were battling your case in court.
Yeah, I believe so, that the NPP did not tell us. Of course, I was not in parliament at the time. I was not a member of the 5th or 6th parliament. I only came in
the 7th parliament,
during
yes.
the 7th parliament. So, but of course, the literature that we've read indicates that there was some boycott of the
inauguration.
Of the nation. Yeah, and then the inauguration as well. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, you see, I mean, and this is where we find ourselves as a country. We always have this whole idea of equalization. Our two major parties usually would cite, oh, this one did this, and because of that, we also have to do this. I mean, I think we have to move on as a country.
But Dr. Draman, don't forget that the NDC has also said that they will use all legitimate means apart from going to courts in protests.
Yes, Mamavi, but for me, if you look at what we saw on December 7, honorable member is here and he can speak for his party. I mean, the message I took out of the outcome of the elections is that, look, Ghanaians are not happy with both parties. I mean, that's a very clear. I mean, their party had a majority of how many, 60-something in the current parliament, and that has been significantly reduced. The president had a margin of about 10%, and that was reduced to about 3% that we saw. I mean, I don't think if I'm a strategist in the MPP, I'll be worried about these numbers. At the same time, if the NDC was making a lot of claims about poor performance of this current government after 4 years of a mandate, when they've had the opportunity to deliver on a number of the promises that they have made, yet the NDC could not make the mark to, if you like, based on what we have now, I mean, to capture the presidency and capture a majority in parliament, then I think there's a clear message to both parties. So this, dragging, bickering, and fighting is going to anger a lot of Ghanaians. We hired our MPs to come and sit in the house and do work for us. We talk about boycotts and walkouts and so on. I would even like to say that apart from the political ones that we see on occasions like this, we see, boycotts and walkouts in Parliament every day. I mean, you show us on your screens, several times that the Right Honourable Speakers had to adjourn sitting because
Egyapa royalties.
Not even Egyapa royalties.
We saw a boycott.
Not the boycotts. I'm talking about the absenteeism that we have seen in this 7th Parliament as well as in previous parliaments. Those are also, boycotts because they are boycotting their work and they are not showing up. I know Honourable is...
But with permission sometimes.
Well, with permission. Often we've heard, even the second Deputy Speaker has had, on several occasions, I've heard him say people come and clock in, yet they are not in the house, So for me, I think I would urge the current minority to do well and show up and participate in this. We can't continue this equalization and say because Party A did this, it's
Would
our
you be
turn.
disappointed if they didn't?
If they didn't do what?
Show up
Well,
today.
yes,
for the
I'll
State
be
of the
very
Nation?
disappointed if they didn't show up. Over the years, watching our parliament and watching other parliaments around the continent, sometimes I get a little bit worried with the kind of signages and placards that we see in our house. And I'm not talking about this parliament. We've seen that maybe since the 2nd or 3rd parliament, right up to the 7th parliament. We have the diplomatic community, we have the whole world watching. I know these are all permissible in parliamentary practice. But sometimes when we do it too much, I think it sends the wrong signal.
Okay. I want us to also talk about the leadership of the NPP in the 8th Parliament. But before that, let me take my time and let's talk a bit about this 7th Parliament. You joined the 7th Parliament.
Yes.
I think we've had conversations on the 7th Parliament, but just briefly summing it up, what has been significant in the 7th Parliament that will be dissolving midnight tomorrow?
Well, I guess that if you look at the agenda that has been generated over the years, this 7th Parliament is on record to be the parliament that has done the most work in terms of passing legislation. It's a matter of fact. And when it comes to approval of policies and programs, loans and other matters that requires parliamentary attention, it's unmatched. And so, yes, some issues with attendance, back and forth, But the truth of the
Some
matter
issues
is that...
also with how you've scrutinized some of the documents that have come before you.
Well, I disagree because on the 2 occasions that we've had some controversial in court transactions that have come up, particularly with respect to the Egyapa transaction.
Your own transaction?
It wasn't my transaction. it just bears the semblance of my name. In any event, I do not hold any intellectual property right to the name Egyapa. That entity, of course, I mean, I laugh over it because indeed when people call me Egyapa, I say add royalties like I did to you before we came on set. But just for the fun of it. But the truth of the matter is that that vehicle was set up as a wholly owned vehicle of the government of Ghana through the Minerals Income Investment Fund, wholly owned by the state of Ghana. The intent was to list part of the shares of Egyapa royalties. And that's what came before us for approval. But listen to the narrative. That some people have sat in their room, cooked some transaction for the benefit of their family or friends.
Is it listen to the narrative or pay attention to the details of the transaction
but
itself?
of course, I read every single page of the documents. Every single page. My agreement with the civil society organizations, and I've said so publicly, with respect to the questions that they raised on the valuation, because it was legitimate. But I was also satisfied with the responses that had been provided by the Minister of Finance and his team. That look, yes, just like you go and incorporate a company at companies registry that you incorporate with the state capital of 1,000 Ghana cedis. Okay, that obviously cannot be the value of the company, dependent on what it is that it's going to do. Okay, but when you go to the market, then through the book building approach, the value of the company will be determined.
So obviously,
Egyapa. I mean, look, we can go back and forth.
Even
but
though
I
it
can
came
tell you,
later in the 7th Parliament, it's been one of the significant issues.
But that's why I say that everybody who took pains to read the documents, of course, questions about propriety or otherwise of the procurement of the consultancy services and all that, we can have a debate on that. But the substantive transaction, I found nothing wrong with it. You see, look,
I guess you've shared your thoughts on this.
Hold on. It's important.
In the past,
I sit as a permanent friend of the finance committee. So I'm not a former member, but by the graciousness of the chairman, and because of my legal knowledge, and there are not many lawyers on the committee, so he asked me to join them at their meetings. So I attend. I know the kinds of things that some members of the opposition said in private about what it is that 4 months to an election, you guys are going to raise 500 million. Hey, you want to keep us in opposition forever? That's what informed all the noise. I've said that I agree with the legitimate questions that were raised by people who wanted answers relative to what it is that the value of the asset that we are putting across was. No issue. Because that's the role of civil society.
I mean, we've seen, Mr. Messer, I don't want us to dwell on this
to the point. No,
too long.
Dwell on it. But just one point. To the point that the chief whip of the NDC, when I was participating in the debate, sought clarity whether I was the owner of Egyapa royalties. Can you imagine? Pure politics. That is what it was.
Okay.
But people's integrity was impugned. All sorts of comments were made to the effect that some people were setting up some scheme to steal from the people of Ghana.
So I don't want this to become a debate because this is a matter that we've dealt with in the past. But is there something you want to say on this? Because the question really that I posed
was the 7th Parliament.
I was going to go there and then go to
because you've
PDS.
been with...
Because I've been mentioning.
Mama V, if I may come in, I mean, your question was, our... assessment of the 7th Parliament, which stands dissolved tomorrow at midnight. I think the honourable member has made a very important point about, the number of pieces of legislation that have been passed into law. Yes, I think we've seen a very big number, and I think the 7th Parliament has to be commended for that. But what I want to add to that, and I'm happy he's a member of the 8th Parliament. I mean, in our Parliament, what we don't do regularly is I mean, some kind of post-legislative scrutiny. I mean, every 3-4 years to see, the laws that have been passed, have they really addressed some of the gaps that were, intended to be addressed in the first place, and so on. A number of parliaments are doing that right now. So I would encourage the 8th Parliament to try and maybe down the road, look back and see, yes, we passed all these, beautiful laws, but are they really working? So, that's on the lawmaking side. In addition to that, I think one significant thing that has happened in this Parliament, for which the Right Honourable Speaker must be commended, I think is a passage of the Private Members Bill. If you remember Mamavi, during his maiden speech, 4 years ago around this time, I think he took a very bold step, and did what many speakers did not do in the past by saying, look, there's nothing that stops members of parliament from introducing private members' bills, because other speakers have interpreted the Constitution, the Article 107 or 108 saying, anything that would add cost to the consolidated fund and so on is not permissible. But I think he has done very well in terms of making sure that this has become a reality now. So if an honorable member sees something in society, a gap, a challenge, I think he or she can bring a bill, to Parliament, and if honorable members agree, it becomes law, just like what we saw with the one proposed by, jointly sponsored by the leaders and the MP for Kumbungu, Honorable Ras Mubarak. So that's on the lawmaking side. We have to commend this Parliament. When you come to oversight, Mamavi, that is where I think there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered. We are currently undertaking a study jointly with the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs to do an honest assessment by getting members of the 7th Parliament to respond to some of these issues, so that on the basis of that, we see where the 7th Parliament really stood in terms of oversight, scrutiny, and so on.
The executive?
Yes, of the executive.
Okay.
Because that's one of the most important functions of Parliament. So on that one, I think we still have a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Isn't that also a complicated matter, seeing that most of them are also part of the executive?
Yes, that makes it very complicated, because you see, this marriage, that has been induced by our Constitution. I think is one marriage that I've said several times that even the Catholics would support a divorce, if we have to go that way. Our former President Kufuor, in his last State of the Nation address in this House, I think mentioned that if there was any one thing that he needed to change, or he needed to see changed, is that, separation between Parliament and the executive. The constitutional review process, we had the National Conference, and the submissions from citizens, overwhelming, Mamavi, about 90% of submissions said, look, this is one big concern that citizens have in this country. And I think it keeps on, hunting us and hunting our Parliament. The current majority leader, when he was in the minority, I've had conversations with him in which he said, look, this thing, we need to find a way to make sure that Parliament is independent. Because we go around, different countries, and we see, you go to Kenya, you go to even some of these Francophone countries, you become a minister, you have to give up your seat so that you focus on your ministerial job, and then the member of parliament can focus on his parliamentary job. So maybe that's some conversation for some future date. When you come to the third function of parliament, which is representation, that is where I think I have a lot of concerns, because, as I said earlier, the kind of political boycotts that we have seen and walk out 14 of them or so in the last parliament from the NDC. But we have seen a lot of boycotting of citizens, if you like, because, if my member of parliament doesn't show up in the house to work, it means that I'm not being represented. And we've seen this several times in the 7th parliament, to the extent that, at one point I have even said, the Right Honorable Speaker has to crack the whip. And I know, it's easier said than...
What could he do? What could he have done?
In some parliaments, Mama V, you don't show up, you lose certain privileges. But you see, our standing orders and the rules make it such that, I hope in the current revision of the standing orders, our honorable members have looked at this. I think you have to be absent continuously for some number of times before, some sanctions kick in. So somebody can go, maybe assuming that is 10 times, somebody can go up to 9, and then he shows up, and then the count begins again.
No, that's not what it is.
What is it, Honorable?
15 days
exactly.
in a meeting, or I believe so, in a meeting.
So,
exactly.
So this was just an example.
Yes, just an example. So I'm saying that, the rules might have to be looked at, because we have seen, those in the chair, the speaker, his 2 deputies, several times lamenting. We understand, and a lot of those who have been absent are ministers of state, and the business of the state takes them away. But there are also those who are not ministers of state not showing up. And there are even those from the minority not showing up. So on the aspect of representation, I think we have some challenge there. That's on the part of the MPs. But we have to look at the other part as well, Mama V. And this is an age-old conversation that we've been having in this country. Look, I have been a very strong advocate of the fact that members of parliament do not have to take a loan to buy a car in order to do parliamentary business. Yes, I think just to be fair, Mama V, if we are talking about equality between the 3 arms of government, my chief executive in my village gets a car that is fueled by the state and everything, because he's every day running the business of the state at the local level. We expect our MPs, somebody who comes from my constituency, which is about maybe you have to travel up north, maybe about 10, 12 hours to get there. And you expect the honorable member to take a loan to buy a vehicle that he or she uses regularly to go and do constituency work. I think that aspect, we need to look at it. So and then our standing orders also are not too clear. The standing orders are clear on lawmaking, the processes and so on, in terms of, how the bill comes to the House, referred to the committee does its work and so on, reports back to plenary. Oversight, scrutiny work is done at the committee level and so on. But when it comes to representation, which most citizens around the world have argued for them is the most important role of a member of parliament. And that is why we see a lot of big names falling during elections, because of expectations that, wrongly or rightly and so on. That's another debate. But, that is not clearly defined in our standing orders. Unless maybe the honorable member is here, he can tell us. I don't see where it says clearly that if you don't go to your constituency and do constituency work, there are sanctions, such as if you don't show up to do committee work or to do plenary work and so on. So the issue of representation has 2 sides. On the one hand, I think we can fault our members for not showing up for work. On the other hand, I think I'm sympathetic to them in terms of what we expect them to do in the constituency, yet we put a lot of burden on them in a lot of countries around the world. Members of parliament are given means of transport to do their work. It doesn't necessarily have to be, they have to be given each cars and so on.
So what's the alternative? Don't give them loans, but what should happen?
Well, don't give them loans. The state can give them vehicles. Because if a minister of state has 2, or I don't know how many they have, some even claim that they can have as many as 3 vehicles. Why can't the member of parliament have just 1 vehicle so that he or she can use that to do his constituency work? But you see, the flip side of it is when you start making this argument, then people say I mean, the only thing that people see and understand, because you guys don't show the work that members do at the committee level, which is the engine room of parliamentary business. All we see is what happens in the plenary, and that is what is beamed into our homes. So when you start making arguments that, look, Honorable Egyapa would have to be given a vehicle so that he can commute between here and the Western region to do his parliamentary constituency work, then the argument is, these people don't show up for work. So why are you, arguing for more benefits for them? Already they have enough benefits and so on. So, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Maybe there should be parliamentary TV or something that would broadcast the detailed work of parliaments so that the people can also tune in.
Yes, exactly. In some countries they have parliamentary TV.
Yeah.
Like I did some work in Trinidad. They have parliamentary TV. They have a dedicated channel where citizens can follow the work of parliament, not only in the plenary, because the plenary sometimes is just theater.
But isn't some of the committee meetings also closed doors?
Yes, some are.
Don't always
some
welcome
are.
cameras.
But I think that there are some, if matters are not controversial, matters are not, state secret and so on, I think some of those can be open. I know it's only the Public Accounts Committee and the Appointments Committee, that are open. And you see, if you talk to people about the work of Parliament or the work of committees, the only committee that they talk about is the Public Accounts Committee, because that is what they see on TV and so on and so forth. In 2007, we did a lot of work. Maybe if you are not aware of the history, we opened up the Public Accounts Committee to the public when Honorable Salas Mensah was chair, and when President Kufuor was president.
I remember that.
One day they just woke up and this thing was out there, and it has never stopped. I think Parliament has done very well, as in many other countries, to keep this process going. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done so that we close that representation conundrum that we have in our Parliament.
I appreciate the breakdown, and I think you've painted a very good picture for us, those who are following this conversation. It's a special one that we're having from Parliament. There's the State of the Nation address. This very last one from the President in his first term in office. That will happen. The advertised time is 10 a.m. And of course, this is coming before the dissolution of Parliament, midnight tomorrow, the inauguration of the 8th Parliament, swearing in of the Speaker. Lots of activities happening in Parliament, but we're having a conversation ahead of the State of the Nation address. We're coming to the bit of this, the 8th Parliament, the Parliament that we will see just in tomorrow after midnight, a minute after midnight. I just want to go through the leadership as has been released by the NPP. So we're maintaining the Speaker, and I say we're maintaining the Speaker even though Parliament will probably say, oh, it's a proposal, but we know that the party proposes, you definitely endorse it. So Professor Mike Okoye will be Speaker if he is endorsed or voted for by the NPP in Parliament. But we've seen some changes. The majority leader will be the leader of the governing party in the next Parliament, because we can't still say majority in the 8th Parliament. How many seats do you have as NPP?
But that's where you err.
Okay, please educate me.
Because the definition of majority is not one party. It's either one party or several parties coming together and recognizing one person as their leader.
Definition as we have it in your standing orders.
Absolutely, and if you permit me, I'll
please go ahead. I'm also going to pull and then I'll check exactly how it's been defined. So you still insist that you're majority?
Absolutely.
With 137 seats?
138.
We're
the majority side because the independent has indicated that he's going to sit with us.
Yes, when you're voting.
So,
but he's not a member of your party.
No, he's not a member of our party.
Yes.
So
I'm asking the seats that the NPP has as a party.
Oh, that's 137.
Seats? Exactly.
Yes.
How many? The NDC also has 137.
But that's what I'm saying that. So let's just say that we found ourselves in a situation where NPP had 110 and CPP had some 50. okay, and NDC had 120, and CPP decides to sit with MPP, who will be the majority? Obviously, in simple terms, NDC is.
Can we?
But
Dr. Rahman, help me here.
Let me just read.
We say that this is a hung parliament.
It's not.
It's not. Oh, that's interesting. Whilst he pulls out, I'm also trying to pull. Please, can you help us here?
Well, I mean, unless maybe I'm also reading the numbers wrongly.
Okay, so before you come in,
Yes.
majority leader means a member of parliament designated by the party or parties holding majority of the seats in the house as their recognized leader in the house. So, for purposes of this definition, the independent is a party.
No, the independent is not a party.
But who is he?
No, the independent is not a party, and that is why I think that, you see, the standing orders, we need to carefully look at the standing orders and anticipate some of these situations.
But this is purposive interpretation.
Well, yeah, I mean, somebody can also interpret it differently.
How?
And say, this person is not a party. He is not a party. The independent member, he's not a party.
He's not coming from a
Who
political party.
says that party is political party?
No, but your standing
No,
orders
party is political
don't define
party.
that.
No, party is political party, honorable.
So can I ask you,
Yes.
where there is, where we find a word ambiguous, for instance, in this instance where we're not sure what party means, where do we go for interpretation? If it was the Constitution, we would go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But when it has to do with Parliament, who interprets what words mean in Parliament?
I mean, I think that Parliament is the master of its own rules, and that is where I believe, some discussions, amongst the key stakeholders in Parliament would clear some of these, and then they can come to some form of an agreement in terms of how they understand their own standing orders. But you see, Mamavi...
Doc, before you come in.
Yes.
If you look at the definition of minority leader, it will put it in clear context. Okay? It says minority leader means a member of parliament.
Yes.
Designated by the party having the largest numerical strength in parliament other than the party that has formed the government as the recognized leader of all the minority groups in the house. All the minority groups.
Look, honorable.
Correct?
Honorable.
No, that's the standing
Yes,
order. So
yes.
I agree with you
Yes.
that there seems to be some incongruity in terms of what it is that party means. Now, I've introduced a new word, groups. So what does party means? What does parties mean? What does group means? Okay? And then if you put the entirety of the document together, which is how we interpret documents, read it as a whole, the definition of majority leader and minority leader put together makes it clear.
Okay.
Who the majority side of this house is.
So your position is that you are majority.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess for those of us who are observing, and I'll take a cue from Asepa.
But we'll see in the coming days.
You are the
whether we are majority
you're the governing
or not.
party in,
but there's no
in
such,
Parliament.
There's no such provision as governing side and opposition side.
Yes.
There's either majority or minority.
Honorable, and that is why Mamavi, just give me 1 minute. That is why I have seen a number of parliaments. For instance, I was recently in Sierra Leone, and you know what happened in Sierra Leone? I mean, their standing orders were designed for the kind of NDC, MPP, or majority-minority that we have. Then they woke up in their last election, which brought President Bio to power and his party. And there are so many smaller parties that are not part of any majority or minority. And they say we can't find ourselves in these standing orders. What's going on here? I mean, we are also in Parliament. So the point I'm making is taking a cue from what I have seen in some places and taking a cue from what is happening. I think the standing orders, it's a living document. And Parliament crafts it. So the lawyers are there. I think they have to anticipate some of these things and sit down and look carefully. Because you see, we are talking about this today. It concerns the NDC. We can wake up 4 years down the road and it concerns the MPP. So we want to make sure that, whatever we have as the Bible or the Quran of Parliament is fair, irrespective of where you find yourself.
Absolutely.
Whether you are on the right-hand side of the speaker or on the left-hand side.
I've just got 2 minutes to wrap up.
One moment.
I wanted to...
Maybe one moment.
Yes.
Assuming that the independent candidate wakes up tomorrow and decides that rather than the MPP will join the NDC. What will be the situation?
Yes,
NDC
exactly.
will become the majority in parliament. It's as simple as that.
But
there's no controversy in respect of this provision.
Okay, so for some
as far as I'm
of us,
concerned, there's no controversy whatsoever.
Some of us are not so clear, so I won't quickly be on.
Trying to explain
I won't quickly be on your side.
As far as I'm concerned, the provisions are clear.
I won't quickly be on your side. But I wanted Dr. Draman to touch on the names that have come up for the NPP.
Yes.
I find interesting the whip. Who's the Adwejuri Member of Parliament. Now there's no female deputy to the majority leader in the 8th Parliament. What do you make of the names that have come up?
Yeah, I think, beginning from the leader, I think the MPP has made the right choice. I've heard him say, oh, I'm tired, maybe I want to do something else and so on. But, in the turbulence that's ahead of all of us as a nation, I mean, we need some steady hands, and we need a lot of experience. And I think Honorable Chairman Sabunsu, in him, I think if we go to the 8th Parliament, I think he'll be the oldest, the longest serving. He'll be the father of the house. I think we need, because he himself has said in the past, for those of you who drink wine, he says the older the wine, the better the taste. I mean, I don't know because I don't drink wine. So I think a steady hand at this time is very important. So I think, I mean, that's a very good choice. But you see, Mama, my general comment, I mean, you made mention of the female, I mean, and so on. My general comment about, all the names that I've heard in the last week or so, in terms of speaker from the NDC, speaker from the MPP, I didn't hear the name of any female candidate. I'm talking about all the names that we had for the speaker. It's all a male affair. And then you come now to the leadership, I mean, again, a male affair, and I don't know what is...
Oh, I think the...
No, I mean, yes, I mean, I'm talking about... Yes, I'm talking about, I mean, if you compare it to what we saw when Honorable Ajwa Safo was deputy majority leader, you go to the NDC side, I think it's the same thing. We are hearing that Honorable Aruna is going to be the leader of his side, I mean, followed by Honorable Aveji and so on. I mean, what happened to the gender issues and what happened to the women of this country, and what's happening to the women who are going to be in this 8th Parliament?
Great
so
question.
for me, that's just one aspect that.
Well, Egyapa, you have to go, but are you going to be a committee chair?
Well, I cannot say for now.
Your name has come up in some circles. Legal, constitutional.
Of course, I used to be the vice chairman of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. I used to be, or I'm now the vice chairman of the Communications Committee. In both of those committees that I sit on, the chairs are leaving. And so 8th Parliament is open. I'm just going to wait for the leadership of our caucus to make a determination.
That's a very diplomatic...
If you allow me, I have a question for Honorable. I have a question for Honorable before he leaves. I mean, are you going to share the leadership of the committees, or is just going to be one
majority and minority?
This is something that you've been very passionate about.
Yes, I've been very passionate about that.
And that's exactly what's going to happen.
This is a conversation that I've had with Honorable Chairman when we visited many parliaments.
But there are committees. There are communities that they chair.
Well, I mean,
those
public
are the
accounts.
ones.
Yeah, I mean, just the traditional. Those ones are
subsidiary.
Those ones are the provisions of the standing orders say. But now we are in a situation where I think you need to share power.
Power sharing.
Yes.
I don't think that the construct of our constitution and the standing orders allows for that.
Yes, but those can be changed.
Doug, you're introducing us to a whole different level of the conversation. We've got to go, gentlemen.
This notion of power sharing that is being bandied about, I don't think that we should even entertain it.
Okay, all right.
But our president, our president said in his victory speech that you guys have to govern together.
We will collaborate.
What does it mean, govern together?
We will collaborate with them. We would try and build consensus. But we have won the election.
Okay. All
That's
right.
clear.
So I guess we have to leave it here, but thank you very much, gentlemen. Andre Egyapa Mercer, you've got to go. Dr. Rashid Rahman, I don't know how much time that you have.
Well, I'm staying for the State of the Nation address.
Okay, so I guess you're staying with us then. Stay with us. There are plenty happening outside that we'd love to show you. It's our coverage of the State of the Nation, the last one to be delivered in this current administration. Stay with us. This is still Joy News.
Well, so quite an interesting conversation there, in Parliament on the back of what we're expecting today, the State of the Nation address.